New guest. First time on the program, Kevin Murray. Welcome.
Hey, it's an absolute honor to be here. A huge fan of the show. Big fan of you. I love your work. We've spent a lot of time together this year, this summer even. And so I'm excited to be here.
You and I, we spent time at the FSGA conference. You were there, accepting awards for your podcast. And then we saw you again, spent a lot of quality time with you at the FF Expo. You're just a swell guy. You're just a great guy. And what was cool is we were in Ohio and Fast Draft had launched. And you were like, I'm about to get on a plane to Washington. What am I going to do? And I'm like, you gotta get some turbos in. So you were submitting all these turbo orders where you just submit your rankings with these guys and rankings with these guys. And then next thing you know, all these emails are coming in with all these teams that are getting completed, while you're sleeping, while you're on the plane. And you're like, wow, this is the way to do it. If you're going to travel outside Washington or any of these states where fantasy is not allowed, there is a way to actually draft a whole bunch of teams seamlessly without it being, you're going to, I'm going to invest all this time on my vacation to drafting. And that's the problem is when you're on vacation with your wife, with your family, and they're like, hey, we're here so that you are not doing fantasy stuff. You're hanging out with us. So that's a tricky thing. If you're in Washington or one of these states where they've banned real money fantasy, when you travel, you're like, oh my God, I got to get these drafts in. Right? I mean, you're like, honey, I get it. Like, this is beautiful, but you got to let me do this. I can draft here. This is amazing.
These are fast drafts.
Oh, well then, and the fast draft component too. But yeah, just in general, I always find it, because I was in the same situation because I'm in Connecticut and there's only 2 fantasy operators in Connecticut because the license fee here is unaffordable to almost everyone, including even the FFPC. It's like, no way, right? I live in Connecticut. Fast Draft, not going to be in Connecticut for a long time. Too expensive. But we would go to Block Island, which is technically off Connecticut, but it belongs to Rhode Island. So I'm like, and we're in Block Island. This is beautiful. This is great. Where's Matt? Oh, he's doing underdog drafts back at the house. I'm just like, I'm locked in my room. Like, I know it's beautiful. I'm sure the water's fantastic, but I can draft. This is a big deal, everybody. I'm sure you'll have a great time without me.
It's fantastic. No, it's true. It's true. You gotta take advantage of time. You get out of the state and pull in some drafts for sure.
And that's the life of a fantasy football sicko diehard, right? And you're one of the leading voices in the fantasy football podcasting subset of the industry. And that's really what you decide. I love that. I love that you decided, like, hey, there's all these different websites popping up and there's all these different resources and these people are doing these things. And there's super innovative concepts, right? Like there's a new podcast in the Player Profiler Podcast Network, 32 beat writers. Yeah. They aggregate all the beat writers and they find every little nugget that is fantasy relevant, and then they aggregate that. Genius. Super smart.
Brilliant,
right?
Brilliant for sure.
But you were like, you know what? Like, I think I'm just going to do a killer podcast and we'll let the chips fall from there. And that speaks to me because that's what I did, right? I was like, I just want to turn the microphone on and talk fantasy football. And man, wouldn't it be nice if I could just pull up all these stats and metrics that I like to use and cite easily? So that's how Player Profiler came to be. It was just like, I wanted a quick and easy way to access all these stats and metrics that I was citing on the podcast. And so I created this tool. And then when I created the tool for the podcast, I was like, well, I think everyone could use this. So I'll just make it public, right? So that was the genesis of Player Profiler and how it came to be. And then I'm on my podcast. I was like, as I'm looking up right now on Player Profiler, and people were like, "Well, what is that?" And then the best part was when, for the first time, people were saying, "Oh, I found your podcast because I was on Player Profiler," and I was like, "Oh, full circle." So it felt good. It felt good. So talk to us about this Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast, because you get some amazing guests.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been so much fun to put together. Backstory for me is that I've been playing this game since 1995. I love fantasy. I love the league experience, and so getting together with friends and family and playing fantasy was it was about those connections, right? So I just loved the game, and that kind of accelerated me into kind of becoming a fanatical commissioner. And I was probably around 2009, I think. I decided to convert a league that I had been going for about 8 years into like a live local league. We got to get live drafts. Let's make it extra fun. So a couple years into that, I said, I've seen some weird things in fantasy. I've seen a commissioner run off with money. I've seen managers just drop their whole teams out of some dispute. And so I've seen the best of fantasy. I've seen some weird things. And I thought, I want to make my league the best it can be. And so at that point, I just kind of relied on myself, right, with my own awareness of football, and then the host platform analysts, the ESPN people, the Yahoo guys. I didn't realize this whole world existed, this massive community, all the different content creators outside of kind of the mainstream.
Oh, media, on Twitter, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So
back then it was called Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that world existed, and kind of ran into this ESPN contest where they did a Commissioner of the Year. This was like 2016. And by this time, I had every year, just our live drafts would be just crazy. We got, banners and speeches and just full.
Well, how many leagues were you hosting?
Yeah, I had one main league, but I commissioned several. But I had one league with that live local vibe.
Just 12?
And 12 people.
12 people. Okay, and it was a big deal.
One league. We died, and it was just like it was friends from elementary school, junior high, high school. And I just wanted to make it special because I love fantasy. I wanted everyone in the league to experience, just my passion for fantasy. And it turned into this ESPN contest. I won ESPN Commissioner of the Year.
So and basically, they anointed you the best fantasy league in the world.
That's what they did, essentially. Essentially, that's what they did. And to me, growing up, I was obsessed with ESPN, and all of a sudden, I get to fly out to ESPN, spend the day out there with the ESPN fantasy team during their ranking summit. And with that contest, what it was league members, sharing, clips and videos and things that their commissioners did for their league. And so again, I got a lot of community support. A lot of the contest was held on Twitter. And so I just got to meet so many people who loved our videos and loved the stuff that our league was doing. And so it was that experience where, again, meeting everybody at ESPN and then finding this community and realize, wow, there's so much beyond Yahoo and ESPN, and there's so much out there when it comes to content. I thought, wow, I've been fanatical commissioner and fantasy enthusiast for years and years, longer than I was a chiropractor. And so that was like my passion. I'm like, this is a great world. I want to get involved. And so time constraints kind of held me from getting more and more involved, and then essentially got to a point where I'm like, okay, I got to do something. And so because of that experience with the community, I created fantasyfootballunlimited.com, which is, it's like a portal into the industry, just links to all the different resources out there. So that's where, I thought it would be a good place for me because I love this content. I love the community, wanted to help share resources because I want people to fall in love with this great game. So that's kind of where that came from, and then that evolved into, okay, I've met a lot of great people.
Player Profiler links on there?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay,
of course.
Good.
Yeah. So
good.
yeah, so
good.
Yeah, I essentially had met a lot of great people from that commissioner contest, and then at events like the National Fantasy Football Convention and SportsCon, which led into like the Fantasy Football Expo, and I joined FSGA and just got to meet so many great people, made a lot of great connections, and so naturally the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast was born. A lot of commissioner, like kind of league, content originally, but that led into the interview series, which I've been doing for the last, year and a half or so. And as you said, as you've been a guest, it's some of the great people in the community, on every level of this community, are just sharing their personalities. Because again, I want people to connect with analysts. I want people to connect with brands and just enjoy the game, because I think this game is really special.
You're a real positive guy, but I've got news for you, Kev.
What's that?
Like Tommy Thunder in the chat, they're already asking me to hold you accountable.
Okay.
I don't know what that means yet, but I think what they're saying is that we need at some point to disagree.
Okay.
And,
Let's do that.
Maybe have a debate of some kind, which we'll see how you do there. We'll see. There's
Sounds
a little
good.
bit of pugilism with this show, and that's what the audience wants. I believe in giving the audience what they want. As a podcast host, you understand that.
For sure.
You understand giving the audience what they want. If they want us to fight, we might have to fight, my good friend.
Let's do it.
And that's the beauty of Kevin and I have already met in person. So this is one of the few reverse interviews and appearances on the Mind of Mansion show we've ever had. Almost everyone that's come on here for the last 10 years, I had never met in person. And then only years later, just at the FF Expo, I met people I had never met before. It was my first time meeting them in person, but I had known them online for 10 years. Yeah. You're the rare case where I've actually spent a lot of time with you, and we're now podcasting. This is pretty cool. Like, it's just a cool evolution that we get to from here. So what are some of your favorite guests you've had on your show?
Well, Matt Kelly was pretty special. I don't want to throw out.
How did your audience react to my appearance on there?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, some of the stuff we went into, just because again with podcasts, it's not a lot of football analysis. It's about the personality behind the analysis. Right?
We need to make sure we're talking about when I was on.
Right. Yeah. So personality wise, getting to share these characters is great, and your episode was fantastic. I mean, a lot of excitement over your passion for what was the the movie? It escapes my mind. The
Edge of
movie.
Tomorrow.
No, it was
Fury.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe. No, it was
There Will Be Blood.
No, it wasn't that either. It escapes my mind. But you had a lot of passion. It was. I can't believe I'm spacing on this. It was, there
was a movie that wasn't one of those three that I talked about.
No, you were passionate about it, and again, I can't believe that it's escaping my mind here.
Tom Cruise wasn't in it.
No, it was
Brad Pitt. No,
John Travolta. It was
Pulp Fiction.
Uma Thurman, John
Pulp
Travolta.
Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, sorry.
Yes, Pulp Fiction. Yes. Oh my God, Pulp Fiction, of course. Pulp Fiction, amazing.
Passion. Lots of great feedback on that. But people like your story. I actually just saw
it for the first time. I thought I knew everything about Pulp Fiction, but John Travolta said that he had never done heroin, never intended to do heroin, but he was committed to understanding what that felt like to be a better actor in the moment, where he's like shuffling around, like. Remember?
Yeah.
So they go, well. The way that you would understand at least the very early onset of heroin and what it feels like is you have to get hammered and then float in a very warm pool, and that's just the very beginning of what it feels like. And then you'll at least get like a whisper. It'll be like a thread that you can follow, and then imagine that but like turned up. And that will give you some sense. And he's like, so that's what I did. I took a bunch of tequila shots, and we cranked up the pool, and I floated there for like 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, I think I got it. I think I got Vincent Vega. I think I'm onto it. I think now I know what I'm going to do. And then so he was like, okay, I'm going to be all I'm going to be all moving slow, but cool. I mean, he did a great job. He did an unbelievable job. I'm so glad that they decided to move forward and greenlight him being the actor in spite of all the executives, all the agents, everybody disagreeing with the casting, except this one guy who just happened to be the director and the writer, and so he got to say, fuck you, this is who we're going to go with, which was cool. I thought that is one of the coolest things that's ever happened in movies, was John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, because of the whole backstory, and then what a great job he did in that character. And you can't imagine anyone else doing it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if it was flipped? And like if Bruce Willis was Vincent Vega and John Travolta was Butch, like, it would have been awful.
Would have been the same.
Would have been way worse.
Yeah.
It was so much better the way it was.
Yeah.
So that's that was I don't actually admittedly remember us talking about that on your show.
That's okay.
But I'm sure it was a great show. I'm sure we had a great time, because when you and I talk, we have a great time. And
well, that's the point, is that we get into conversations, things just flow, and it's fun to see the story behind analysts and the personalities,
Oh, the little in your earphones, you can hear that.
Oh yeah. That's nice.
See, it's time. Oh, it's time. And I know everyone's like, oh, you're stealing from Buffer, and you're stealing from the Bulls announcer. Why don't you come up with your own hooks and your own style? I think this is my own. I think we could say this is something that I do that is unique. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. A former doctor who retired to go into fantasy football because this is the place to be. The host of the FF Unlimited podcast, and just one of the great dudes in the industry. Here with me today is the award-winning podcaster, Kevin Murray. Talk to me.
Oh, that's a nice intro. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
it's pretty
You're
good.
Speechless. You're speechless.
I'm speechless. What do you say? It's an honor to be here. So excited. I think this is a great show. I've seen countless shows like this of yours, and it's just weird to be here, but it's fun because, again, we spent a ton of time together this year. It's fitting to kick off the NFL season like this.
It really is. Thank you for coming in with just the tabula rasa of the season in front of us. We don't know what the hell is going to happen. On the last Sonic Truth podcast, we went through the games, and we talked about, hey, this is what's interesting for fantasy football in this game. This is what's interesting for Dynasty in this game. This player has a lot at stake, right? And so we'll get into all that. But let's talk about these games. Talk about the games that you're most interested in watching week one.
I mean, there's so many games, but obviously kickoff, Chiefs, Ravens. What a way to kick off. I mean, this is, potential and, AFC conference championship, preview. Two great teams.
Who wins that conference championship, by the way? Who goes to the Super Bowl? Is it Chiefs or Ravens?
I got a hunch that it's going to be the Ravens. I mean, I think the Chiefs, it's hard to have that consistent, championship winning run. I mean, 3 in a row would be insane. I think the Ravens. I think it's the time for the Ravens. But this game is so much fun. I mean,
correct answer.
Okay.
Ravens going to the Super Bowl. I've said this. It's going to happen. One of the best managed teams in all of sports. Think about the quarterbacks they've won Super Bowls with. Think about that. Trent Dilfer and Joe Flacco. Child, please. I mean, that how impressive is that? Everyone's like, oh, Bill Parcells winning with Phil Simms and Jeff Hostetler. That was great. But Dilfer and Flacco, tough to beat. Tough to beat just in terms of, hey, this organization had to build a team. And you'll just have to excuse me if I root for the team over the superstar heavy team that is, constantly. And I know the Chiefs fans. I've had Chiefs fans send me socks, right? Brandon Scott, right? T-shirts. He knows. Brandon Scott knows. He's like the number one Chiefs fan in this audience. Great guy, and he knows that I've historically not been as bullish as I need to be on the Chiefs. And then here I go again. Doubting, and then this is what fuels them. These Kansas City fans, it fuels them. Because a lot of us are we're just ready for something new. And if it's going to be new, I think it would be cool if it were Lamar and Derrick Henry. There's something about Lamar, Derrick Henry that I don't think that we can fully process as just aesthetically awesome football until week one, till we actually see it down in, down out, what's going to happen. Like all of these slick, play actions that they're going to do, and then some of these pitch plays and some of these screen plays are going to draw up. I mean, if you're a linebacker going up against Baltimore, I mean, that is the hardest assignment of the year.
I can see that. Yeah, no, I think they nailed it with this kickoff matchup. I think it's going to be so much fun to see.
What other of these matchups I mean, that's kind of a chalk option.
Yeah.
So let's go a little deeper. Is there another game you're like, okay, this game is going to shoot out? This game, oh my God, this game, I can't even believe it. Like this is the under the. So mine is Cardinals Bills.
Okay.
The Bills defense is a shell of what it was a couple years ago. The Cardinals certainly have a better offense than their defense. So you have these two mobile quarterbacks that are going to be playing in shootout game conditions. Two teams with, again, elite mobile quarterbacks where both offenses are better than their respective defenses. And that's the type of game where I'm betting the over and I'm stacking the players in that game. And I'm just intrigued to see what happens. I'll definitely be tuning into that. Cardinals, Bills, for some reason, when you're going down the slate, it doesn't jump out at you. But it should.
Yeah, and you want to see Harrison. A lot of these games that I'm excited for are about these rookie players. Going to see their usage. But another chalk game I'd say but I think it's really intriguing is Jets Niners. Like, how does Aaron Rodgers look coming back off that Achilles? Niners defense, tough. It's a tough assignment for Aaron Rodgers, but they got to kick off the season right. How does Breece Hall hold up? Look against the Niners. I'd expect him to play pretty well, but that's a fun one. For sure. I also want to see the Bears. I want to see the Bears Titans, just to see what that offense looks like with Caleb and Romeo, right? What do you call him? Romeo Dunze, right? So Romeo Dunze, phenomenal player. I want to see what his
Romeo Dunze is I mean, leaps and bounds a better name.
It is. No,
it would be cool. I mean, Rome is a cool name. Dunze also a cool name. So it's a very cool name. Romeo Dunze, because Dune, the game, is super popular. Yeah. And anytime you can add a Z to something, that makes it even cooler. And then now you're Romeo with one of the great figures in literature, right? And you're known as the ultimate ladies' man. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than that name. So he was so close to having the nuts name.
Yeah.
That's a weird phrasing. But anyway,
weird one.
You're so I'm with you. Actually, that was one of the first games we talked about on the Sonic Truth podcast was Titans Bears. Lots of intrigue.
Yeah. I mean, I want to see Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. Like, how does that shape out?
Well, we Will Levis. We have no idea what's going to happen. What is Will Levis?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what Will Levis is? Are you sure about Will Levis? Is Will Levis Matthew Stafford? Is Will Levis Jay Cutler? What is Will Levis?
That's a great question. It's a great question. Another one that I think is a ton of fun is Texans Colts. I mean, I think that probably jumps off the page for a lot of people, right? You got Stroud, you got all those weapons. You got, everyone wants to see Anthony Richardson, see what he can do out there. And so,
Anthony Richardson with Jonathan Taylor. It's very similar to the Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry situation.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's hard for me to get, enthusiastic about receivers other than the number 1 or number 2 options on those teams.
Yeah.
If it's not Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers, I'm not that interested. Really, if it's not Michael Pittman on the Colts, I'm not that interested. It's just difficult. It's difficult for me to get into Adonai Mitchell. I'm sure he's a very good player. I'm sure Josh Downs is a good player. I think that Rashad Bateman's a good player. It's just very difficult when the features, like what the football fans actually are excited about, is what the coaches are also excited about. You don't think the coaches are excited to call Derrick Henry screen passes? 100%. You don't think the coaches are excited to run these fakes and these play actions with Jonathan Taylor and some of the draw plays? There's all kinds of creative little pitches, right? Little inside pitches, little shovels. Like, that's all I would do. If you think about it, put yourself in the shoes of an offensive coordinator. What are you going to do? If you have Derrick Henry, you have Jonathan Taylor, I'm going to be drawing up these shovels and all these things. I'm not going to be thinking about, how do I get Josh Downs involved? Yeah. How do I get Alec Pierce involved? I'm not going to be thinking that, man.
No, you want to play with your toys, right? You want to put them out there and play with them, right?
Yeah, we got to break out Tez Walker. Not really. Not this year. I don't think so. First down, we'll throw to Zay Flowers. Need a first down. Maybe back in the end zone, we'll go Michael Pittman. These guys are going to get targets, right? The number 1s on those teams are going to get targets. But after that, I don't know. So give us another game that you're interested in.
I mean, Jaguars Dolphins is a fun one. I want to see that Miami offense. I want to see what they do, with Achane and Mostert. I want to see, obviously, I love Waddle this year. I think he's fantastic. I want to see Miami, just moving the ball up and down the field. Jaguars, I feel like there's some intrigue there. I want to see, what does Trevor Lawrence look like? I feel like in fantasy drafts, he was just a massive bargain potentially later on, pairing him up with another, quarterback with a little higher upside. Trevor Lawrence might have a fantastic season this year. I'm hoping he does, because he's certainly talented. You got Brian Thomas out there. Let's see how these new toys look out there.
Now, you were anointed the best commissioner in the world by ESPN at one point, because you had one of the greatest home leagues that's ever been. And in these home leagues, weird shit happens, right? It's one of those things where you need to be ready for people to fuck up in front of you, because they're just not listening to the same podcasts. They don't have the same rankings. They're not maybe as dialed as you are. And sometimes you can go into a draft having a plan. I'm going to be I'm going to be drafting at the 104. This is how things are probably going to go, because I've done so many of these underdog drafts and FFPC drafts. Then your home league draft happens and you're like, holy shit, I had no idea. So you need to, especially with the wide receivers, a guy like Jalen Waddle, he can fall to the 4th round. Mm-hmm. And you're like, he never goes in the 4th round. He never gets out of the 3rd round, any of the drafts that I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, well, most people, when they think about Miami, they think about Tua, who is, right? Sort of a mid-level quarterback, and he has his number 1 receiver, Tyreek Hill. And for a lot of people, Jalen Waddle's a little more of an afterthought than us, where we are looking at contingent upside. We're looking at, okay, not only is there the possibility, as there is with every player, of an injury to Tyreek Hill or anybody, but also there's the possibility that Jalen Waddle is just as good as Tyreek Hill, that their statistics converge this year. What do you think the probability is that their statistics converge?
I mean, it's less likely than it is, to kind of see it how it's been with Tyreek doing his thing. But Tyreek is getting a little older.
30.
No idea. Yeah, no idea if that's...
He's a 30-year-old speed receiver.
Yeah, exactly. And so Waddle, I think he's just, as a secondary option,
Phenomenal.
there could be definitely much more volume heading his way. I think it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it. I would bet on Tyreek being the guy. But Waddle's value has been phenomenal in drafts, right? Like you said, kind of these guys just kind of falling. You can take him in a great spot where you're getting, whether it's your third wide receiver or your, a deeper second wide receiver that actually, if something happened with Tyreek, suddenly he's a wide receiver one.
The wide receiver one. It is possible. It is all the things you love about CeeDee Lamb, all the things that you love about these, Justin Jefferson. Jalen Waddle has shown that he is one of the true all-purpose wide receivers. That he can win.
And outside,
he can win
for
short.
Sure, and outside
he can win intermediate. He can win everywhere. They could put him on reverses, right? They could do a shovel play. They could do gadget stuff with him. He can do gadget, deep, short, possession, everything. He is one of the most talented wide receivers in the league, and if he were it as a receiver in that passing game, because they're really just those two, then he has the ability to put up the truly mind-blowing wide receiver one numbers in the absence of Tyreek Hill. That's one of the reasons you draft him. But also, even with Tyreek Hill, game in, game out, it depends on the opposing defense. If they want to take away, they want to bracket Tyreek Hill, we've seen Jalen Waddle go off for 40 points.
Yeah.
And the floor is high. The floor is high because there's not that many other receivers. They don't have a tight end that anyone cares about. I mean, Jonnu Smith is a great late option, but he's not a target commander. Their number 3 receiver is in flux every year. They don't have one of these electric satellite backs out of the backfield. Raheem Mostert used to be that, but he's become more of like a guy that slashes between the tackles. So it's super consolidated target share there too. It's just all year I've always thought that Waddle's ADP was lagging 10 slots where it should be.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
So I love him. DFS option upside, tournament play for GPPs this week. I mean, it's just love Waddle. I love it. I can't find a receiver that has a higher floor ceiling combination at his ADP than Jalen Waddle. I mean, the only other option would be Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors also goes in the 4th round in leagues with, friends, family. Most people are not, crawling over glass to get a receiver on the Giants.
Yep. Yeah, that's Malik Neighbors will be the next guy I would think about, just who I'm really excited to see in week 1, right? You have a guy that is very talented. Everyone wants to see how he looks out there. The game script is never going to be favorable for it's always going to be favorable for him, right? Because they're going to be behind quite a bit this season. And they got to get the ball to someone. That's you're going to be your biggest playmaker in New York. I'm excited to see Malik Neighbors for sure.
So look at the game totals. Texans, Colts, 48.5. Right? 48.5 also. Cardinals, Bills. So, yeah, I think the game makers know that that's going to be a shootout most likely. And then the other 48.5 game is Jaguars, Dolphins. Of course, Jaguars, Dolphins. I mean, of all of them, Jaguars, Dolphins probably has the best chance to go over of all those ones, because it's possible that the Bills offense takes a couple weeks to get in any kind of rhythm. And it's also possible that the Texans and Colts defenses they come in at better than expected. But I don't think anyone's like, okay, I'm worried that the Jaguars and the Dolphins defenses are really gonna hold the scoring in check in this game. I don't think it's not something that we can see. The final game of at least Sunday, 8:20 NBC, Rams at Lions. So are the Lions your pick to face off against the Ravens in the Super Bowl, or is there another one?
I mean, you set me up, but yeah, they are. They are.
Okay,
That,
you did. This is it. You
are.
Didn't tell me.
Yeah.
I was.
No,
this
no.
Is, this is a popular pick. Ravens, Lions.
Yeah, I think the Lions.
It's hard. Pretty chalky at this point. I have a lot of people are saying this is what I think is going to happen, and it kind of makes sense.
It does.
They made a push last year. The Lions made a push last year, and now they're ready. Everything is coming together. They continue to build. They are not overspending on the quarterback position. They've been able to make some luxury picks that have not hurt them. Like Jahmyr Gibbs was a luxury pick, didn't hurt them. Jameson Williams, a luxury pick, but he may actually have great utility stretching the field for the other receivers to have more room underneath. So it all might work out for the Lions this year.
Yeah, I think that they had a great run. A lot of times, teams that have a strong run, there's a lot of emotion involved. It takes you down when you lose deep into playoffs, and it can be hard to rebound from that. But this is a young team with a great coaching staff that they're going to be fired up. It's going to be a great locker room, right? This team, I think, is got the talent. I feel like San Francisco would be the other team that I would consider getting there. At this point, but they've had a rough off season, right? There's that kind of stuff can affect teams. And they got the talent. They definitely got the talent. But Detroit, man, I just love everything about that run. I feel like they left a lot, to be unanswered at the end of the season. I certainly thought they were going to get in, by the way that game was with the Niners. But that's it's a great young team with tons of talent, great coaching staff. Let's go Detroit.
I mean, there's a couple of these games where the bookmakers are clearly not sure how aggressive they want to go. And so they're just kind of playing it by ear, feeling it out. Titans at the Bears. The Bears are only 4-point favorites. And I'm like, the public just doesn't realize how good the Bears are yet. If Caleb Williams is anything close to what we saw on Hard Knocks, and it's a known that their defense has vastly improved. They've invested all this draft capital in the defense. They're making smart acquisitions. They're dominating preseason. They're at home, right? So, every home team immediately gets 3 points. So the bookmakers are saying the Bears are 1 point better than the Titans. No. The Titans are retooling. They're in the midst of a retool where the Bears are like, we're pretty much ready to go. Ready to make a playoff push this year. And we're at home. So Chicago -4 is one of the easiest bets, I think, to make. And Lions -3.5. I mean, there's certainly plenty of underdogs you want to take as well. So I'm not always trying to hear, pound the favorites. It's not my style. But Lions at home against the Rams defense has been decimated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Puka Nacua hasn't played in preseason at all. Again, it's a home. They're essentially saying that these two teams are on par based on the line. It makes no sense. The Lions are clearly a much better team up and down the roster than the Rams at this point. So what is it, coaching? Right, it's a revenge game for Jared Goff. I mean, the whole thing, it's a revenge game for Matthew Stafford too. It's a double revenge game for the quarterbacks. Who cares? There's no revenge game. The revenge cancels. It is double revenge equals no revenge.
Yeah, and they just did it in the playoffs, right? They just did it in the playoffs last year, right?
And the revenge has really already been had, so there's no more revenge left. The revenge tank is empty and canceled and nullified. Yep. So that to me, there's just a couple of games on the slate where it's like, okay, I think this is pretty easy. And then you have other games where it's like, well, Broncos are getting 6 points at Seattle. And it's like, well, we don't know what the Broncos are. I'm not even sure what the Seahawks are, right? These are two very unknown. So if you're going to take a road dog and just take the 6 points, like that might be one where you're like, okay, there's a few of these instances where the bookmakers are like, we're pretty sure this team is great, and we're pretty sure this team is bad, but most of these we're not 100% on. Whereas I'm like, okay, I think if I had to go with an underdog and take the points, Patriots, right? We're not. Who knows what the Patriots are going to look like, right? Broncos. So just Buffalo -6. That's a lot. That's basically assuming that these were the Cardinals from 2 years ago and the Bills from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, Bills defense has been deprecated. Cardinals are improving across the board.
Yeah.
I think that's, if you're going to take another underdog, I think that I'd go Cardinals on the road. I could see them winning that game. To me, I think that's more of a coin flip game.
Yeah. I can see that.
So, what about players? What players are you most interested in watching in week 1?
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Daniels, I got to see what he can do out there, right? I mean, obviously, you look at the Patriots holding back on May, keeping him, behind the starter there. But Jaden Daniels, no question about him being the starter. He's out there. See what he can do, for fantasy. I think that he was another player that I was surprised in drafts to be able to acquire him late. We've seen quarterbacks get acquired later in drafts in the past with that rushing upside that all of a sudden become, league winners, right? Whereas the Jaden Daniels, I feel like he's there for you if you want to, get kind of a steady quarterback and you back him up with Jaden Daniels and you might win out that way. But there's just so much intrigue to see what he can do on the field. How much is he going to run? He's known to be very accurate. Can he hold up behind that offensive line? Does he have enough weapons there in the passing game? And even if he doesn't, produce in the passing game, is his rushing numbers going to help create a floor that makes him just a viable starter each week? So Jaden Daniels, definitely a player I can't wait to see.
Did you get him in this famous home league that you won all the awards for? Did you get Jaden Daniels? Is he your starting what? Yeah. See, this is the thing.
Yep.
This is the thing. When you
when
you're going in these expert leagues, flip a coin whether you can get Jaden Daniels or not, because you never know. Someone's going to jump up and grab him, and then you're going to settle for Caleb Williams. Big deal. That's the hack. It's just go with one of the 2 top rookie quarterbacks this year in seasonal leagues, managed leagues. But yeah, if you're going against your buddies or you're going against your local bros, if you don't get Jaden Daniels, that's on you. That's on you. So I'm really glad that you got him. I'm happy you got him. Question. Pop quiz hot shot. Who scores more fantasy points this year? Terry McLaurin or Nico Collins?
Oh my gosh, that's really good. I would say if I had to make a wager, I'd say Nico. I just think he's in that offense. It's proven.
Okay.
Terry McLaurin is not getting points when Jaden Daniels is running, right? Where Stroud is going to be throwing and throwing and throwing.
That is an argument I would make. Nico. If I were steel manning that, That's what I would say. If I were going to say Nico, it's a wrong answer. So you got a correct answer earlier, though. You started off real strong.
Okay.
Right, but now we've got to go ahead and do this. So it's Terry McLaurin. Nico Collins, super overrated. I think that of all the third-round picks, he's the donkeyest, right? Just like a couple months ago, Kyron Williams in the second round was the donkeyest. I saw Puka Nacua go in the first round a bunch this summer. That was a complete donkey move. So those are my donkey picks, and Nico's up there with the donkey category for sure.
I will say I do not have a share of Nico Collins.
Thank you.
I'm not
because you know what you're doing. And you didn't draft
yeah.
Nico in your famous best ever league that you run.
No, I did not.
So you're still the commissioner. You haven't moved on. You're not too you're not too busy, too big of a deal now. Host of Fantasy Unlimited. No, you're still the commissioner.
Yeah, no, still try to make that a fun experience every year. Mix it up. We just hosted this year at Dave & Buster's, which was a ton of fun because we got to draft we got to set our draft order by doing a skee ball competition, and then there were some ties, and so they got to run it out on Mario Kart. So it was a lot of fun. We got a little parade going throughout the establishment with our champion. Got a guy behind him holding his banner. You got the last place guy at the back, holding the "I suck at fantasy football" parade, or a flag. So it was a ton of fun, a great establishment.
Any of your league mates suggest having it at a strip club?
It's never come up. I think that it happens. It definitely happens.
I've heard of it.
It's an option for you. It's an option for you out there.
It's an option.
If you
but
want
again,
to
you're a
spice up,
wholesome ESPN sanctioned league. You're not going to have it in a strip club, but I'm sure Alan, my co-host on the Sonic Truth, I'm sure we would love to interview maybe on that podcast, whoever has their draft party in a strip club. That would be interesting.
There would be interest for sure.
Dave and Buster's strip club.
Yeah, a little opposite. A little bit.
So, Jaden Daniels, he has a lot at stake in week 1.
Yeah.
Right? If he face plants in week 1 and he looks like he's out of his depth, well, even the most ardent supporters, drafters, fans of Jaden Daniels, you're probably going to maybe go out and grab a backup quarterback if you don't have one.
Yeah.
Right? So there's certainly a lot at stake with Jaden Daniels. I'm not worried. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah.
Who's another rookie where you see there's a lot at stake week 1?
I mean, obviously it's week 1, so we got to keep that in sight. Like, it's a long season, a long career ahead for these rookies. But I think there's a lot at stake for Xavier Worthy, right? It's an opportunity. No Hollywood Brown. Let's see what kind of usage he has. How can they implement? I mean, he's phenomenal athlete. He's more than just a fast sprinter.
He's a targeter.
So it's a huge opportunity for him to get out there. To if he has a strong first, 6 games of the season, first half of the season, first handful of games, it will really impact the long run when Hollywood comes back, how they want to implement him. If things are rolling with Worthy and they got Rice and Kelsey healthy, I mean, you might not want to mess with that too much. Whereas if he starts out slow, struggles, some rookie mistakes here and there, Hollywood obviously is a pro, and if he is healthy, he might get back in there and take up some of that timeshare. But right now, this is a huge opportunity. Yes. I mean, I think that Xavier Worthy, he's one guy that I really want to see how they use him, and he's also a rookie that things can really, change depending on how fast he starts out.
Yeah, Theo brought this up, and I hadn't given it much thought, but he talked about the pressure that some rookies are under just based on their situation. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, Xavier Worthy is under more pressure, a greater microscope, with more at stake because of this Marquise Brown injury. Whereas before, it would have been understandable if he went no targets. If he bageled in week 1, it's like, okay, all the targets went to Kelsey and Rice and Brown, and they're bringing him on slow. But now suddenly you've added all this expectation. Yeah. And there are a litany of bust wide receivers from pick 10 through, the end of the second round. These are all receivers with draft capital. And yet the draft capital can't save a lot of them from busting. The first round draft capital could not save N'Keal Harry. It could not save Josh Doxson. It could not save Jalen Reagor. It could not save all these receivers. And I love Brian Thomas. I love Xavier Worthy. I also acknowledge that these guys can't all hit. And it's just it's a little nerve-wracking to go into week 1 knowing, wait, I'm a little bit out ahead on most of these rookie receivers.
Yeah.
And now I'm nervous. Right now, fortunately, I'm also fading a number of these rookie receivers. I think I've chosen correctly. But every time I look at the math, I'm always like, I'm too heavy with my Bulls and too light on my Bears. Like I'm not accounting for enough busts in this class. tricky.
It is tricky for sure. It definitely, I get the same experience. There's so many talented players, but how they mesh, on the field, how they handle the playbook, how they handle the adversity. There's a lot on the line, and yeah, there's definitely gonna be some players that just don't live up to expectation. You nailed it, N'Keal Harry. I mean, hello, but it's a good one. Yeah,
go in the second round, right? Later in the second round,
yeah.
Marvin Mims.
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Mims to me looked like a better version of Marquise Brown at Oklahoma. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, this guy is absolutely a wide receiver that I would buy. And yes, the probabilities tell me I should just be going running back in the late second round. But man, if Mims is there, I got to make an exception. And I always do this every year. Always do this. I should set the line at Ladd McConkey and say after Ladd McConkey, I'm out. And that essentially means no receivers after the first round. But every year you make that one exception, and then you go back and look at it and like, I should have seen this coming. This guy's actually, he's not Marquise Brown. He's D.D. Westbrook. Right? And it's like, this was all well within his range of outcomes, but so I think that Marvin Mims has a lot at stake. These dynasty receivers, especially heading into their third year, some in their second year, if they don't fire in week one, what like truther dynasty value they had remaining vanishes. It makes you want to just trade all your receivers that don't hit after 2 years. It just get
for sure.
Get them out of my life. And then like, okay, you missed on Nico Collins. You sold low on Nico Collins. Okay, that happens. But I'm just so terrified. And I bet if you add it up, I don't bet, I know. If you add it up, whatever value you gave up on a Nico Collins by punting these receivers after 2 years of lackluster production, you will end up ahead in Dynasty.
It's a fair stance, I think.
It is fair. Because look at it. I mean, you could always the Nico Collins to me is the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm always interested in finding that Jerome Ford, putting him on my taxi squad, injuries elevate him. Next thing you know, this guy's an every week starter. This guy's winning my league. And the receivers that were drafted around him in the rookie draft are nowhere to be found in the NFL. Yeah. And now we see Chuba, we see Jerome Ford. They're going to be starting for the foreseeable future. What if Chuba Hubbard and Jerome Ford play well in the next 4 weeks?
From a dynasty perspective or just redraft? Yeah,
what are we doing? There's a lot of assumption that the drafting of Nick Chubb, the drafting of Jonathan Brooks was predicated on them walking through the door when activated with a workhorse role. That's not necessarily going to happen.
Yeah, I think with Chuba, I've never been really impressed with his abilities on the field. I think if he hits week one, that value is going to spike, right? I think that it'd be a great time to move on from Chuba, the next couple weeks if he does have a quick start. Ford, though, he showed, in stints last year where he can definitely produce. When Chubb comes back, what is his ability going to be? Coming off of those injuries is pretty significant. He's a guy that I could see riding that first half of the season because I think he's going to be putting up some good numbers. So Ford, I think you have a little longer if you want to end up selling at a peak value. I would ride him out because these guys, both those guys, great values in drafts, easy to add, late in fantasy drafts. So you don't have a lot invested in them. But if they hit, there might be some managers in your leagues that are in need of a running back. And so if you can move on, upgrade a little bit, or at least get high value for them, I would do it, especially Chuba, because I don't expect him to be. I don't think that team's going to be a prolific offense. I don't think he's going to be in the best situation to be a consistent, weekly winner in fantasy. So if he does spike early, I would move on.
So Isaac Darnell in the chat says that he's been saying it all summer in the chat that player profiler is just too high in this rookie class of wide receivers. And guess who else? Guess who else has two thumbs, Isaac, and has also been saying this to Theo to his face on the Sonic Truth podcast? This guy right here has been saying this. This is what I've been saying for years. This is what I've been saying to Nate Liss and everyone else that has ever podcasted with. It's like, hey, man, the probability that these guys, and this is why we did the Breakout Finder app. The Breakout Finder app was designed by Nate Liss and I so that we could actually end the argument. Like, okay, what is the probability that wide receiver X actually breaks out? And there's a handful of guys like CeeDee Lamb and a few others, Jamar Chase, where their probability of breaking out is well above 50%. The vast majority is below that. And that's Xavier Worthy. Not sorry. Okay? That's even Ladd McConkey, as much as it pains me. And if Isaac is worried about how bullish we are on rookies, then I would not recommend going to other sites and their rankings because they're even more bullish, because you have someone like Billy, someone like me, someone like Dan Williamson, who have seen a lot of rookies come through the door and faceplant. So every team of the meeting of the minds, you have to have people that have the Bulls case for Brian Thomas ready to go, and then others that are like, well, but historically, and then the Breakout Finder says this, and this is what we've seen, and don't forget about that, where it's like he's going to be the number 3 receiver. He only eats after Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, and yes, he can hit in a big way, and in certain contexts, like, big field tournaments in best ball, he's a great option. Unbelievable option. Even in the Flex 4 game on Fast Draft, where you're just drafting out to 60 players, and that final round 6, I suggest dabbling on some Brian Thomas. That because the hit, when it hits, is on a Corum, on a Brian Thomas, on a McConkey, could be epic, could be nuclear. But we do a tremendous job balancing the rookie fever with cold, cool, clinical, sometimes boring analysis of what's actually likely for these guys. And we have these conversations out in the open on podcasts, which is something I really believe in, right? It's have it out, man. Disagree. Don't just do it behind closed doors and be like, oh, our rankings are the Bible. Well, no, let's talk about the process and how it, and if you prefer Theo's approach, that's why in our world famous draft kit, we have the ability for you just to download Theo's draft kit and his cheat sheet. What's wrong with that, Kev?
Hey, I think it's a great idea for sure. And you're right. I mean, I think that some people just get so excited about these rookies, the potential, and especially like in redraft. I mean, you got to proceed with some caution. I definitely support, taking some flyers at the end of the draft. If you want to add some potential options at the end of the draft that could break out, but don't expect it, right? Have some flexibility when it comes to moving on from some of these guys. Not every rookie is going to have a slow start in an Odell Beckham, strong finish to a rookie season. So proceed with caution.
It's very possible the Chargers get out to a lead. They decide to sit on the football, deflate it, and McConkey is underwhelming. I'm not going to sell McConkey after a bad week 1. I'm not going to sell Xavier Worthy after a bad week 1. That's not what we're saying. I'm just saying, number 1, the overall season production is going to be underwhelming for a bunch of these rookie receivers that were drafted with premium draft capital, and that's just how life is. That's just the life of a rookie in the NFL, number one. Number two, they're the least productive in week one, and they get more productive as they get acclimated to the league and as time goes along. Week one is when you see a seasoned veteran like a Jerome Ford, like a Chuba Hubbard rise up. And then you have to make a decision, especially in Dynasty. It's an interesting and sometimes a tricky decision about where your team is at, where when am I going to sell this guy? When am I going to sell high on a Jerome Ford? When am I going to sell high on a Chuba Hubbard? It's fascinating. My first read on the situation is probably not right away, because there's no guarantee that Nick Chubb comes back at 100% and that it's not a split backfield for the rest of the season. Same thing could be true in Carolina, where Jonathan Brooks is not the upside play that Blake Corum is.
Yeah.
Jonathan Brooks has capped upside that he's on Carolina and he's going to have a rehabilitated knee. Jonathan Brooks isn't going to see his upside, even have a glimpse at it until 2025.
Yeah.
So
what's
if
the
you're
upside?
just going upside, you got to go Corum.
Yeah. What's the upside for Carolina to use Brooks, earlier than they need to? Like, they don't, right? It is a 2025 play. Maybe, when he gets back, towards the end of the season, they give him a little run just to keep those legs, fresh. But I don't think that there's a lot of motivation to get him used. So that's the argument for Chuba, is that he's going to have volume. It might not be too productive, but he's going to be a player that gets touches. And if that's what you want, do you keep him, ride him out because it didn't cost you anything, or do you try to sell? It just depends on where you're at, with your roster, how you want to create that depth at running back. Do you need a guy like that on your team? And in Dynasty, are you competing this year? If you are, well, maybe keep him on the roster just to ride it out.
Right. And then there's also know the format. Like Fast Draft is total points.
Yeah.
Other formats are playoff system. So if you're going to be drafting Jonathan Brooks in a playoff system where there's a shootout at the end and all these leagues come together and they have a virtual playoff where you're actually, competing to advance week in, week out, Jonathan Brooks becomes this amazing, like airdropped spike week running back. My issue is that I think the spike weeks are very unlikely given his situation and given that he's going to be rehabilitating a torn ACL. He's just not going to be 100%. So it's just a little bit harder for a guy in that position to deliver spike weeks in general. And then if you're on a total points format like Fast Draft, because it's a lot easier to just say, hey, how many games do I think this guy's going to play, and just base your projections on that, than trying to understand a player's schedule. This deep understanding of the NFL schedule, I think, is very difficult. And I think it's one of the things that's very challenging for the average fantasy gamer to get engaged with the platform is trying to understand the advancement in the playoffs. It becomes a level of sophistication that may not be open to or may close off the possibility of certain people playing, right? But in that case, if it's total points, you absolutely want Corum, because there's all these weeks where you're having to compile points where Jonathan Brooks isn't even factoring in to whether he can enter your lineup or not. So that's just format based. Now, when I am talking about the players that I think are going to tilt me in week one, we've talked about on this show many times already. Greg Dortch targets will tilt me. Ray Davis, high-value touches, will not tilt me, but will tilt a lot of people. A lot of the James Cook enthusiasts out there are going to be tilted by that. Michael Mayer, red zone target's going to tilt people. Some people will be tilted by the Andre Ioshivos spike weeks. the listeners have a new one for us. The Carson Steele red zone touches. Carson Steele red zone touches are going to tilt people. What do you think?
Yeah.
How are you going to feel about this?
Well, certainly. I mean, if you're a Pacheco guy, you've spent the entire offseason looking at a backfield where you got it 100%, right? I'm still confident in Pacheco's season. He's been a great value in fantasy drafts.
You're confident in Pacheco as a second round pick, delivering on ADP?
Yeah. There's other guys I would take in that time. I don't have a single share of Pacheco, but if I had him on my roster, I'd feel good about overall production. But yes, no doubt that if he's not getting goal line, which he should, I mean, he is a rugged runner. I mean, he should be getting that ball at goal line. I don't see a scenario where Steele's getting those goal line touches. So I totally understand why that would be a tilt. Obviously, the Pirine addition also is another factor that could make you a little concerned about Pacheco. It's a late factor in this whole thing, but I think Pacheco is going to have a strong season. So if that doesn't happen week one, yeah, people are going to be tilted for sure.
Pacheco's underdog ADP is just bizarre to me. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense because if you look at his high stakes ADP, it has collapsed from a peak of 21 down to 30. Now, if you just look at his, monthly average, it's flat. But that's why, on Player Profiler, we have the ADP tab. And I'll show you this on Pacheco right now. It is absolutely fascinating. So let's go ahead and pull it up now. Look at this. This is the Pacheco ADP.
Wow.
So it's climbing. Now he's like, oh, wait, actually, look at this guy. Oh, he's in the second round. Look, he's in the second round.
Yeah.
He's in the second round. He's on the Chiefs. And we could do the math. Yeah. This guy's going to score so many fantasy points. Then all of a sudden, Samaje Perine signs with the Chiefs, and then we see now down. Fascinating.
That is fascinating. That's a great graph.
Yeah, that's the player profile. That's the ADP tab. So you can look at high stakes versus best ball. It's interesting. That Pacheco is a spike week specialist. Okay? Mm-hmm. Pacheco absolutely will deliver the spike weeks.
Yeah.
In a way that Jonathan Brooks never could, because Jonathan Brooks isn't on the Chiefs. Right? So if you're on underdog, you're not as concerned about Samaje Perine. Yeah, the weekly upside is capped a little bit by Steele and Perine, maybe stealing some red zone touches that wouldn't have otherwise been stolen by, say, a Clyde Edwards-Helaire or a Deneric Prince, but it's marginal, the difference. And that's why you see, hey, there's nothing stopping the Pacheco ADP in best ball, but in managed leagues where you have to make a decision and the upside isn't as clear, and you're going to be tilted when you put him in your lineup and the ball goes to Samaje Perine or they hand it off to Carson Steele. That explains why you see people that were drafting him in the second round being like, okay, maybe I'm just going to take a breath and see if he's there in the third round. And I think that is the move. The second round Pacheco was always a projection because what has he done so far? What is he? I mean, I hate to sound like a boomer. What has he done? Well, last year, 15 fantasy points a game. Didn't get to 1,000 rushing yards. Didn't get to 50 receptions. Didn't get to 10 touchdowns. Didn't hit these markers that you would expect of any running back going in the first two rounds. You would think would have to have this on their resume or be like a Jahmyr Gibbs level talent.
Sure.
But Jahmyr Gibbs was an early first-round pick. Jahmyr Gibbs is a phenomenal receiver out of the backfield, truly electric in a way that Isiah Pacheco is not. Isiah Pacheco is not that kind of receiver out of the backfield. Isiah Pacheco was a 7th-round pick. They got incredible value on him, and if you're going to be filling out your backfield as a franchise, you need to be doing it the way that the Chiefs did it. Burning a first-round pick, as much as I want to see the Lions in the Super Bowl, it's the craziest thing, man. And I'm just so snobby about a roster construction theory in the NFL that for someone that was so all in on the Lions and their whole rebuild was done in such the right way, and then they decided to lose their minds and draft field stretchers and running backs in the mid-first round.
Yeah.
And off-ball linebackers. Like in 2 consecutive years, that's all they did was invest in just that skill set in the first round, which is totally illogical for someone, a GM that I thought was super rational and understood the positional value. So it makes it a little bit difficult for me to be excited about this Ravens-Lions Super Bowl we keep talking about, where I'm like, do I even want to reward the Lions for drafting a fucking running back in round 1? I don't know, man.
It's true. I think that, they treated those picks like luxury picks, whereas, you want to treat those picks like foundational pieces to build upon what you already had. And you're right. I mean, it's definitely an interesting approach. I mean, I love it for them when it comes to talent. I love it for them for fantasy. But it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Because they have a team that can compete. If Gibbs plays a huge role in the success this year, okay, I can see where that argument might be made that they made the right pick. But just black and white on paper, no. I mean, obviously there were some different ways they could have gone that would have shaped their franchise a little differently. That probably would have been more productive.
Pacheco, one of the best draft picks of a running back in the last decade. 7th-round Pacheco is just chef's kiss. Yeah. It's chef's kiss, and Gibbs will never. Process-wise, it will always be a catastrophic failure to go Gibbs, especially when Pacheco exists. Right, the existence of a Pacheco in the 7th round, the existence of an Austin Eckler as an undrafted free agent, is happening over and over and over again. Because you can say, oh well, Adam Thielen was a free agent. Adam Thielen wasn't drafted. Yeah, okay. Do you realize how many undrafted wide receivers hit? I mean, it is so rare. I mean, Tyreek Hill barely played in college, and he was like a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah.
They're
unicorns.
The thirst for these kinds of players is huge.
Yeah.
They're not going to go unnoticed. But running backs, easily can fall through the cracks. And you just have to keep taking shots on them over and over and over again. Just keep taking shots if you're an NFL team. And when they don't, and when they just say, fuck it, we're going running back in the 1st round, it's like, I can't take you seriously. And I just can't be as much of a fan of Brad Holmes as I was. Like, I'll never look at Brad Holmes the same, because you might say, well, Dan Campbell forced him to make these picks. He had to draft a middle linebacker named Campbell because he's Dan Campbell, and it just made too much sense. And I'm like, well, okay, but then either way, he's either weak or he's showing bad process.
Yeah.
Right? You're either demonstrating bad process or you're weak. Either way, I can't look at you the same. And I don't want to talk about this. I want to talk about the Lions winning the Super Bowl. Or
let's do it.
Or at least losing to the Ravens. I don't want to talk about this.
Go.
But I have to. It's crazy.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
The chat is continuing to bring up a particular name. Ryan Florney or Ryan Flournoy? Do you know who Ryan Flournoy is?
Off the top of my head, I cannot tell you.
Ryan Flournoy is a 6th-round wide receiver who is on the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I've seen that. Yeah.
He has looked good. The camp reports have been positive. This guy's super athletic. 84th percentile speed score, 93rd percentile burst score on Player Profiler. He's a little bit older, right? A little bit older, age 24. So he's going to be almost 25 at the start of the season, which is wild. I'm sure there's some reason, some COVID transfer reason. I'm sure. Like, I'm positive, right? Went to Southeast Missouri State, small school. Not the biggest producer, but just in 10 games, the guy's putting up basically 100 yards a game, right? And that's interesting. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by Ryan Flournoy. There's nothing behind CeeDee Lamb, right? You have the 30-plus-year-old Brandon Cooks, who relies on speed and agility, and those things they just decline at a disproportionate rate for receivers with that kind of body. Then you've got Jalen Tolbert, who has struggled to pick up the playbook and really has seemed overwhelmed by the league since he arrived in Dallas. So it makes sense to me that Ryan Flournoy would be interesting.
They got to get the ball to someone, and you know Dak's going to be throwing the ball, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
What about so in Dynasty, you don't have any of this guy stashed?
I do not have a single share of Flournoy. No, I do not.
I think he's I could tell everybody this is the type of receiver you should be betting on, because yes, I know that the age is a huge red flag. Age at draft is one of the most predictive metrics when we're looking at the range of predictivity. I don't even know if that's a word. I think it's predictiveness, but I think predictivity is actually a great word, and I just made it up.
Good word.
You're welcome. When I'm sitting down with Dario and Evan on the analytics team and talking about, hey, what goes into the breakout finder? What's driving some of these ratings? Age at draft, just as important, if not more important, as breakout age.
Yeah.
And so the fact this guy was this old is a major red flag, but it's baked into the draft capital. Like, this is the age, and the fact that he went to a small school is the reason why he was the 40th pick in the 6th round. Bottom line is, this guy is a quality receiver who was productive at a small school. In a lot of these smaller schools, they're more run heavy. So a lot of these receivers, they can't be as productive. And then when you look at the athleticism, it's incredible. You shouldn't be able to get a guy with a 93rd percentile burst score and 87th percentile catch radius in the 6th round, the late 6th round. So this was the Cowboys scouting department and their overall organization. It's why my head says Lions when I'm predicting the Super Bowl, but my heart says Cowboys.
Wow.
Which is so weird. It's so weird because it used to be that my heart was with the Lions. Right? I wanted to see the Lions. They had never been to a Super Bowl, never won anything since maybe, I don't know, the 40s, who knows.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is a feel-good story. Suddenly, I'm like, no, the analytical move would be to bet on the Lions. But for just the drama of the analysis and the coverage and the spectacle.
Yeah.
Getting Jerry back into the Super Bowl at the end.
Yeah.
And they're doing it the right way. They've been building. Who's not investing in the running back position at all? Who is rolling with undrafted free agents and retreads?
Yeah.
They didn't invest in a Gibbs.
No.
No, they're going.
Yeah, that would
they're
be
going with like pass rushers. They're going with truly impactful franchise cornerstone talents over and over and over again in the NFL draft. They're doing it the right way in Dallas, man.
The storylines would be off the charts with Cowboys returning to the Super Bowl. I mean, there's so many Cowboys fans out there that, man, it would be fun for sure if the Cowboys had some success this year. And you're right. They avoided the running back. Yeah, they avoided running backs as much as you could possibly avoid them in the draft. The last 2 seasons, right? So
yeah,
it's
they have these scouts, these area scouts that are going to Southeast Missouri. And then they also have an analytics team that's like, listen, we can't be drafting running back. We can't be investing in these positions, positional value wise. We've just got to make it work with whatever middle linebackers we can grab off of free agency, whatever running backs we can get off the waiver wire, and at the end of drafts. And then we need to only focus on, corner, edge, quarterback. This is where we need to put our resources. Number 1 receiver. It's like, yeah, guys, talk dirty to me, Cowboys. This is yes. Yes. So for that reason, it's like, wow, they have the scouting department to find a Ryan Flournoy, and then also to avoid drafting or overpaying for a running back. Like, it could have been them that overpaid Saquon.
Yeah.
That's a total Jerry move.
Yeah.
Would be to stick it to the Giants, a division rival. That's what they would have done. Saquon Barkley 10 years ago would have been a Cowboy.
Yeah, yeah. And in the draft, a lot of people were like, oh, Jonathan Brooks or Jalen Wright, let's go, Cowboys. And it did not happen.
Everyone was mocking Jonathan Brooks, the Texas running back, Jonathan Brooks, to the Cowboys. It just made too much sense.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if you talk to people in Dallas, they're like, that would never happen. Our analytics department is too strong. Their voices are too strong inside the organization. And you're like, what? This is awesome. And so this makes me like Flournoy even more as just a fringe guy to grab. On Fast Draft, we have an Origins tournament, which is all rookie. And it's just, hey, this is a rookie tournament for 2024 production. That's it. That's all that matters. Flournoy, an incredible pick. In round 5 and 6 in the Origins rookie game on Fast Draft. Now I have 10 burning questions for you. 10 burning questions from a man, and we'll get into it after this. Oh, it's the Podfather, and last year's fastest-growing fantasy platform is back. It's SmashUp Fantasy. They've got these leagues where you redraft your team every week, and you get smarter as the season progresses. Now, SmashUp also has a patented power-up card. These are actual cards that can boost your individual players or your entire team. So if you think Lamar Jackson's going to run wild all over the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 1, play the Scramble Spikes SmashUp card to turbocharge his rushing points. And that's not all. SmashUp also is introducing the world's first single-player fantasy game. Think Street Fighter meets fantasy football, where you can go toe-to-toe versus an increasingly difficult fantasy football boss and qualify for the postseason Tournament of Champions. So test your skills against me, the Podfather, and the PlayerProfiler Team today at SmashUpSports.com and use code PlayerProfiler. The code is PlayerProfiler to get special perks like extra lineups for these weekly tournaments and so much more. And it's all free at SmashUpSports.com. 10 burning questions. 10 burning questions for Kevin Murray. Before we do, we talk about these fringe receivers on Fast Draft, the Origins tournament. Who can you get in round 5, round 6 of a rookie draft? The other guy who's in the right offense, where you can walk into the wide receiver 3 role and get regular snaps, 50+% snap share, just right there. Malik Washington, Miami, and and this is why I love the chat. We talked about this on the Sonic Truth podcast. The chat is a great resource. They're like, yes, we like Ryan Flournoy, but also there's Malik Washington. Don't forget about Malik Washington. So Flournoy, Washington, these are the types of guys that you could see rising up, seizing a 50% snap share, having these boom weeks because of the offenses in which they operate. That's the way to win a tournament is to be able to hit on those types of guys in round 5, round 6 of a rookie draft.
Yeah, no, I love Malik Washington's position.
He's a guy you've heard of.
Leagues. Oh, I'm in 4 Dynasty leagues. He's on every single roster. I think that I like his. I mean, he was a late bloomer in college, but he had a dynamic season, right? I think he's in a great spot, too, with especially if something happened to either Hill or Waddle, right? I mean, this guy is in a good spot. Great system, and has the ability for that type of offense to do something. So I love the upside there.
So you have a lot of Washington. Who else is up there in terms of your maximum exposure player this year?
Ken Walker, and Jalen Waddle are the 2 highest, in any best ball formats. But yeah, Walker, I think Walker's in a great spot in Seattle. Again, that offense looks like it's going to be a little more prolific, and he's super talented. He's a great running back. He can do it all. I mean, he hasn't been used in the passing game as much as people would like, but he has the ability to do it. And I don't think Charbonnet. Well, he has the ability to do it. Right?
No, but it's very possible, right? And then Charbonnet, just a guy?
Just a guy. I think he's just a solid backup. I'm sure they'll use him to spell some time for Walker, but I think Walker will definitely be the lead dog there. In redraft, I mean, what a value I think Ken Walker is in most drafts, especially home leagues, right? I think that Walker is again, really talented. It's going to be a good year for him.
Yeah, I think that many people wanted me to love Zach Charbonnet.
Mm-hmm.
Like Zach Charbonnet, he's got good, not great workout metrics, like well above average speed, burst, agility for his size. He's got the 220 pounds. He checks all these boxes. And I'm like, all right. But I mean, I also remember running backs like Javorius Allen that had these types of profiles where they were pretty good. And at UCLA, pretty good. Javorius Allen at USC, pretty good. Not anything that I'm like, oh, wow, this is crazy, right? And never having put up special numbers in some way, something special. Say what you want about Quentin Johnston. He did put up truly special yards after the catch per target. He did. And so that is the one thing he had going for him. He had a lot of other problems, right? Where a Charbonnet never really put up any special metrics. He was just a good player. And when you see a guy that checks all these boxes on Player Profiler, but never has that big breakout season, mm-hmm. where he wins all the awards. Well, Walker did that. Right? Walker did that in a year where, there were a lot of other quality running backs his year.
Yeah.
And yet it was Walker, and like, well, but everyone's like, he's like Charbonnet in that he transferred from Wake Forest. And so if he's going to transfer from Wake Forest, then doesn't that say have the same red flags as Charbonnet? Because if you're saying that Charbonnet transferred from Michigan because he couldn't beat out Blake Corum, well, then what about Walker? Walker didn't transfer because he couldn't beat out guys at Wake Forest. He was frustrated about playing at Wake Forest and wanted to upgrade the program. That's why he ended up going to Michigan State. And it so happened when he upgraded, he moved up a level. Isn't that what you want? This is what you want. Like, when I was a kid, my parents we were into horse racing. And when these horses would move up a level of competition, they would typically they would win a couple races, then they would get forced out into a higher class, and then they would finish second to last. That would always happen. And then they would have to work their way up again. This guy goes up a level and wins all the awards. Why am I blanking on the name of the award? It's not the Walter Payton Award.
Is it Doak Walker?
It's the Doak Walker Award.
Yeah.
You ever had this happen where Walter Payton was stuck in my brain?
There
But
you
there's
go. Yeah.
Walter Payton is like the man of the year in the NFL, isn't that right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you're involved in your community and doing all these things. So for some reason I had the Walter Payton. I was like, it's not Walter Payton, but because Walter Payton was blocking me in my mind, I couldn't get to Doak Walker. That's just a weird cerebral phenomenon that just happened to me.
It happens. It took me 5 minutes to try to pull up Pulp Fiction earlier, and I couldn't do it. So
that's right.
I get it.
Exactly. So that's literally what just happened to me. Where I'm like, he won all the awards, including maybe he wins with the Walter Payton Award too. Who knows? And the reason why beyond that, I was just unimpressed with Zach Charbonnet. And when he went in the second round, that was like all everyone needed. They're like, hey, he checks all these boxes. He's an all-purpose guy. And then we got the draft capital we needed. It's official. He's going to be a real challenge for touches to Kenneth Walker. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think Kenneth Walker is a special runner in a way that, maybe like this super like weighted opportunity, RB receptions connoisseurs in fantasy football you would just as soon see Nick Chubb go away and just as soon see Tajay Spears get all the touches in Tennessee and you shouldn't even, it's not even worth it to even give Derrick Henry any carries because they're not targets. And they're not as valuable. So fuck Derrick Henry, fuck Nick Chubb. And I'm like, no. I don't think, that's where analytics goes too far. When you start telling me they're going to bench Kenneth Walker, then you've gone too far. And then a coaching regime change happens. And then actually it's Kenneth Walker who's going to be cannibalizing the targets from Zach Charbonnet because the new coaching staff comes in. They have no investment in either player. They're just like, well, we're just going to go on merit here. And wait, what are we doing? Like, we have Kenneth Walker. What?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, I love that. So I love that very much. That's a great call. And I've also noticed a lot of smart people into Kenneth Walker. And the one that I think is most interesting is Theo does not typically like running backs with the Kenneth Walker profile, and he was grabbing my arm at the FF Expo at the Kings Classic, and he's like, we got to get Walker. We got to go for Walker. We got to get Walker as our RB1. And I was like, really? Because I didn't think you were. He's like, oh, yeah. No. He's like, I'm in. So the smart people I know are also very much into Walker. What about receivers and quarterbacks? Like, do you have a particular stack that you've gotten that you like?
I mean, like, I think that Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers is a great stack. I think that Flowers has dipped a bit in ADP, or at least as far as what I've seen.
Oh, we'll look it up. We'll look it up right now.
Let's do it. But I think, Flowers had a strong end of the season. The whole offseason in the Twitter vacuum, in the echo chamber of Twitter is that, dogging Flowers. But I think Flowers is you saw it down the stretch. Again, he had a great finish this season. That last game, that conference championship, he had 100+ yards, a touchdown. He fumbled on the goal, fumbled the touchdown away. I mean, they want him in the system. They want to use him, like he can do. I mean, he's so dynamic. I think with Henry there, it just opens things up for Flowers even more. So Lamar, especially week 1, I think that game against Kansas City with Lamar, say Flowers, I think it's a phenomenal stack.
Well, let's take a look. We have the Zay Flowers ADP at the FFPC. It's very similar chart shape on both FFPC and Underdog, where he went from 46 to 50 recently on Underdog, and he's gone from 50 to 56 on FFPC. And I prefer that stack. I prefer this stack to the Lamar Andrews stack. Lamar Andrews harder to pull off because they have similar ADPs, but it is possible. Yeah. Certainly it is possible. And but I prefer the Flowers, a little easier to do, and also I just think that Flowers is the true number one there. I think this offense is just going to be great this year. I think there's going to be plenty of room for two receivers to consolidate and really hog the targets and the production, but also for Derrick Henry to go nuclear. I think they're going to have like 40-point weeks in Baltimore. I think that's the thing I think that maybe some projections are missing with the upside of Baltimore is that it's not just going to be ground and pound. They're going to have weeks where they go nuclear.
Yeah, they can do it all. So
yeah, it'll be helpful too if a player like, say, Deshaun Watson can break out and get back to, or re-break out, rediscover his his form from a couple of years back. That would then fuel more shootouts with teams like Baltimore, shootouts with Cincinnati, maybe even get a shootout or two against Pittsburgh. That would help to create more spike weeks for Flowers, especially for Derrick Henry. I love it. In fact, that was my favorite stack last year. Was Lamar with Flowers, Lamar with Rashad Bateman, pretty much whoever was available late. The fact that you could get Lamar and then wait many rounds to get a receiver who could potentially be his number one receiver was a great gift. And then we're right back to it where you have a true number one. Look at the ADP difference just between Michael Pittman and Zay Flowers. I don't get it. Do you understand it? Like, why are they that different? What's the difference? One has Mark Andrews, but they're going to score a hell of a lot more points in Baltimore.
Exactly. I think it's just a great stack because it is realistic to acquire. And I mean, I think Flowers' upside is there. I think he's slipped in a lot of people's minds. I don't know why. People preferring other people in that same range, but I think Flowers is a great guy to grab on your teams for sure.
Anyone in those middle rounds you think has like super nuclear upside?
As a wide receiver, I mean, middle rounds, I think DK is probably not considered middle round.
Okay, so you're in Seattle, which is why I also really appreciate you and your opinion of Kenneth Walker. Talk us through how things are going to shake out, because it's difficult to imagine Fant and Jackson Smith-Njigba and Metcalf and Lockett getting there with Geno Smith. I think, explain this to me.
Well, people are definitely thinking this offense is going to run more efficiently and productively. I think that's a safe assessment right now. I'm just going to bring more to the table and utilize that talent. I think Lockett, obviously, at his age, they're going to, recent injuries. I mean, I think that he is going to be used just differently than he's been used in the past. I don't think Lockett is going to be the same, grab that same type of target share. JSN, obviously, I think is going to fill in that spot. Fant, I don't think Fant is going to be a massively productive tight end. I think he's good. He's a good player on for a football team, but I don't expect him to be a top tight end. DK is definitely Mr. Reliable for Geno. I think that DK, I can see him producing quite a bit, especially touchdowns. Obviously, those are less predictive than other metrics, but I think DK is going to be that first look for Geno. JSN, I definitely think that he is going to be used more. I like JSN more than I like Lockett by far. I do like JSN. But I think DK, he's got that upside to really be productive with touchdowns, to be that target hog. He's just entering his prime. I think Geno's going to lock in on him, and I like DK. I definitely do. And I feel like the value's there. I feel like most drafts I've done, I think DK is often available where I'd want to take him. Similar to maybe like a Waddle when we talk about a high floor. I think DK's got a high floor. I think he's got a high floor, and then if his touchdown metrics hit, I mean, I think DK could be a steal. You don't agree?
He peaked in 2020.
Sure.
And the air yards have been a straight line down. And then week one, these games with the 40-point totals, they frustrate me. Remember what happened last year is that we started off all these games with like 45-point totals up to 50, some of them well over 50, and then the vast majority of the unders were hitting. And it's crazy to go back and remember, but we were apoplectic about the lack of scoring last year and how many games ended up just getting dragged into the mud. That could happen this year. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that there's a renewed adjustment on offense to what defenses were doing last year. We can get back to scoring more points. 41.5 is the over-under on this game, Broncos Seattle.
Yeah.
I don't love it. I don't love games like this. This feels like a pukey game. And when I'm making start-sit decisions in fantasy football, I would prefer, especially if it's like a Seahawks where there's a lot of options in the passing game, if Lockett's going to be healthy, I don't even think you necessarily need to start DK Metcalf in this game. This game is a home game. This is a Kenneth Walker game.
Sure.
You're going to have plenty of opportunities. The thing is, like, some people are in leagues that are relatively shallow, where they may only start 2 receivers and 1 flex.
Yeah.
And at that point, you may be in a position where starting DK Metcalf is not a good idea. I wouldn't play DK Metcalf this week in DFS. It's just not a game to target, period. Cortland Sutton has a better chance of getting there because they're going to be in more garbage time, most likely. According to the bookmakers, that Seattle is a touchdown favorite.
Yeah.
So Cortland Sutton's going to be more likely to outproduce DK Metcalf with less target competition in comeback mode than a team at home up by double digits. It's going to be the Kenneth Walker show. And you're going to have to wait a week to see anything from DK Metcalf. Because you might look at the cornerback matchup is good. The secondary's not that good. The defense has been hollowed out. It doesn't matter. If there's no scoring and it's 15-5. No. 14-3. I know. It's a joke. So if it's 14-3 at half, what do you think is going to happen? Like, think about what you think is actually going to happen. Like I said, I've been giving poker analogies recently. Like, what do you think this guy had? This guy bets like this, a pre-flop, after the flop, on the turn. What do you think he has? Right? Just think it through. Follow beginning to now. What do you think's going to happen? Think about how this game is going to play out. This hand is going to play out that you're dealt with Broncos Seattle. In your mind, run the simulation. You're going to be sitting there in the third quarter with DK Metcalf parked at 2 catches, and you're going to be like, you're hating life. It's like,
true.
Just wait for them to play the Rams. Just wait for them to play the Cardinals.
Exactly.
Don't worry. You have plenty of opportunities this year from even against the 49ers. You'd rather play Metcalf against the 49ers where you know they're going to be throwing than against Denver where you know they're going to be running.
Yeah, for sure. I think long-term, season-wise, there are a lot of favorable matchups. I think DK is gonna have a strong season, but I definitely see what you're saying when he comes to where he peaked. But this system, the offensive system, is a little different, and I think Gino really likes DK, and I'm expecting a lot of touchdowns. So it's hard to predict a nuclear option, especially deeper. Like a Tank Dell is a guy that I think that is in a unique position to really have a strong season if he can stay healthy. He's probably a better pick, when it comes to just upside.
Thank you. Yes, the upside of Tank Dell. Yeah. The upside of Tank Dell is absolutely, definitively higher than the upside for DK Metcalf. That rolled off my tongue as a hot take, but it is not. It is not a hot take. Like Najee Harris being chalked this week, right? Not a hot take. right? If
No.
they're hopeful Warren plays, even if he does, he's not going to get the same touch assignments that he would if he were fully healthy and he had been practicing.
Yeah.
You're going on the road to Atlanta. I know that's not the greatest game conditions. You'd rather Najee Harris be at home this week. But this is just one of those situations where you got to swallow hard and you got to play him. You got to start Najee Harris, even if it feels gross. Even in Dynasty, like, I'll always be starting Najee Harris this week because of my builds. I don't go robust RB anymore. It's been many years since it ever made sense. And so, of course, sometimes Najee's my number one running back. Right? There certainly have those kinds of teams, or at least the number two. Going to be starting Najee for sure this week. But even in Dynasty, if you happen to have some Najee, you might have some really good running back options. I think it's very hard to bench him. I think you have to play him, even though it's on the road, even though the Falcons look good, even though this game total is 42.5. It's possible the Steelers, Atlanta -3. The bookmakers are telling us these two teams are on par. I don't believe it's true. I would bet on Atlanta. I think Atlanta's a much better team than Pittsburgh. I think that's an easy one. That's one where everyone's throwing their hands up in the air. We don't know. We got to see these teams play. I'm like, oh yeah, I think we do know. I think up and down, Atlanta's a better team, and they're at home. I don't understand this. They're going to win by more than 3, I think. But the bookmakers also know things I don't know. And so it's very possible the Steelers have a lead in this game, and it's just the Najee Harris show.
I agree. I mean, it's vanilla. It's chalk. But it's just, it's week 1. They're gonna try to get him involved.
I would play him over James Cook.
Okay.
Right? I would play him over Alvin Kamara. You don't want to play Alvin Kamara, even though it's at home, against the Panthers. It's a 41.5 point game total. And you may be hating yourself about Taysom Hill's usage. Oh. It's just much easier to play Najee this week. It's not like these offenses are any different. Game totals are the same. The Pittsburgh offense is going to be just as anemic this year as the Saints offense. But there's this huge unknown, and we don't know what they're going to do with Taysom Hill. It's very exciting to me. It's one of the most exciting storylines and one of the worst games. It's the stone worst game on the slate, but how they use Taysom Hill is so fascinating to me.
Year after year after year, it's amazing this guy's career. I mean, he's like a legend, living legend in New Orleans. What he's done, I can't imagine how much the fan base loves that guy and how much nationally fantasy players despise his usage.
Right? If Carson Steele was tight end eligible, he wouldn't be a tilt. He would be it would be a love affair.
Yeah.
Right? Just like it's a love affair. We only love Taysom Hill. He doesn't tilt us because we can play him at tight end. That makes him a beautiful thing, a beautiful man. But when you have a fullback, when it's use check, vulturing touchdowns, or in this case, this year, Carson Steele, Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, vulturing touchdowns, it's gross. It's gross, but because Taysom Hill is going to get enough touches at running back, he's going to be an incredibly valuable asset at tight end. And especially in superflex leagues. They're like, what do you mean superflex? Superflex is about quarterbacks. No. In superflex, you don't have the luxury of going tight end early. Whenever I see someone in superflex getting early tight end, I have a buddy, and I've been training him year over year about how to draft in superflex. Year over year. And then he sent me a screenshot of his team, and I was like, you finally figured it out. I think you've graduated. You've absolutely graduated. This is it. You did it. His tight end is, drum roll please, Luke Musgrave.
Okay.
He did it.
Yeah.
He figured it out. He solved it.
Yeah.
Right? I think he has Musgrave and Freiermuth. Perfect. Yeah. Go win. All right? And that's because he's in a superflex league, and he didn't want to compromise at quarterback. He didn't want to compromise at wide receiver. He didn't want to compromise at running back. Now, some people think Rachaad White as your RB1 is a compromise. We know it's not. We know he's actually an all-purpose back, who's still the most underrated all-purpose back in the league. Maybe it's a tie between him and Kenneth Walker at this point. But the beauty is in a superflex league, he has Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And you're like, that's not possible. Well, it actually is. In the Scott Fish Bowl, people have those kinds of teams. So in any superflex 2QB format, those teams are absolutely possible. And those teams, when their quarterbacks are Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Matt Stafford, those teams slay, destroy. So good job for this guy. And with Taysom Hill out there, that team can only be better. In fact, I'm going to reply back. This team could only be better if you got Taysom Hill at tight end. Right?
Yeah, it's just pure chaos. You don't know what you're going to get. So Taysom Hill. When he's on the other side of a matchup in fantasy for me, I don't sleep well. You never know what you're going to get.
This is going to be the week, right? If you drafted Zach Moss, this is the week to start him. This is what's frustrating to me. One of the most, as a analyzer of rosters, analyzer of fantasy teams, going into week 1, seeing someone with Zach Moss on their bench, it's like, what are we doing here? What do now you're drafting Zach Moss for a Chase Brown injury? Is that what you're doing? Is that really what we're doing? No. You drafted Zach Moss to play in week 1 and see what happens for the 2 touchdowns against the Patriots. What do you think's going to happen? Again, close your eyes. Imagine what's going to the game with the biggest spread is Patriots at Bengals.
Yeah.
This is the game. You don't want to play him against the Ravens on the road. You're not going to play him. No, what? I mean,
no,
you know
you're
what
right.
I'm saying? Have you ever seen that? You ever looked at someone's team and go, wait, if you're not going to play him this week, why the hell did you even draft him?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, if you believe in him, I mean, you knew about Chase Brown, right? You knew that there was that, that the potential, battle there. You drafted him for a reason. This is the time to use him until you're proven that, hey, it's Chase Brown show. But Moss is productive when he gets the ball. He's productive when he gets the opportunity. They signed him in free agency. Obviously they want to see what he can do. I probably have more Chase Brown shares than Zach Moss, but I didn't draft him to be my, to be in my starting lineup right away, right?
No,
so
and you're not going to play. You don't have to play Chase Brown this week.
See what happens.
Chase Brown's a see what happens guy. That's the thing. We know what Zach Moss is.
Yeah.
Right? It just like same thing. We talked about the dichotomy between the Steelers backfield and the Bengals backfield. It's the same backfield. Mm-hmm. It's just with the Steelers, they go a couple rounds earlier, but there's not a big difference. There's not a big difference between Zach Moss and Najee Harris. Same guy. Chase comp. Brown
for sure.
And Jalen Warren, same guy. Jalen Warren, we've seen more efficiency from, and we've certainly seen a little bit more from Najee Harris. So that's why their ADPs are a little higher. You have to get them a little earlier. But the Bengals are a better offense. That's why the Bengals backfield's always been much better at cost. With Warren, just see what happens. Let's see what his snap share is. See how much the team trusts him. We don't know yet. Let a game peel off the schedule and see what happens. There's a bunch of guys that are see what happens guys, but Zach Moss ain't one of them. Right? I'm curious about the touch distribution, but the game situation dictates you play Zach Moss.
Yeah, if you acquired him, this is the time to use him.
What about streamers? Your favorite quarterback streamer this week? Do you have one?
If I had to reach, Fortunately, in most lineups, I got my couple guys. But like a Sam Darnold, right? I mean, he's a guy that, like, if you're desperate for a quarterback, and for some reason you don't have a starter you plan on rolling with as a streamer, Darnold, I mean, he's got weapons, right? We liked McCarthy's potential situation. We like Minnesota's weapons. So if you have to reach, I feel like he's a guy. Geno Smith, again, I think that, I know that you talked about that game not being an option when it comes to a lot of points.
Hey, listen, it's a lot. No, this is a great topic. It's one thing to say, well, this team is probably not going to be passing a lot, but the passes will be efficient.
Okay, there you go.
Right? The passing will be efficient, but they're not going to pass enough for me to feel really comfortable playing any of the receivers, because I don't know how many pass attempts there will be, and it just so happens that a bunch of the targets go to JSN, and I would have no idea. We have no idea. Receivers week to week are so volatile. Quarterbacks are much steadier week to week.
Yeah.
We know that Seattle is going to score some points. They could easily come through the air before they start to just run Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
I mean, Geno can run it in. He can roll out and run it in. So Geno is a much safer, steadier option this week than, say, a DK Metcalf. The game situation makes Metcalf much more fragile this week than Geno. So Geno actually would absolutely, I think that would be a very chalky fringe streamer. I would much prefer Geno to Sam Darnold. I hate this matchup. The Giants defense is right up there with the most underrated defenses. I mean, the people that are streaming defenses this week, you're streaming the Giants, you're streaming the Bengals, and you're streaming the Bears, right? Because you're like, oh, Will Levis, he might go full Jay Cutler. So ironically, you stream the Bears. The Bengals are going up against an anemic offense in New England. And then you've got the Giants at home against Darnold. They are going to make life hell. I mean, Darnold's going to have some real PTSD going back to MetLife. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, it's true. Seeing ghosts. No, it's true. And again, week one, streaming quarterbacks. I mean, hopefully you're not streaming anybody. Hopefully you're rolling out. Hopefully you waited and you're rolling out Jade Daniels, or maybe like a Trevor Lawrence. If you really waited on a quarterback, but you got a guy, I feel like that's a good situation. But yeah,
the one guy that's available in a lot of leagues that I think you could conceivably, if you had a bench spot, pick him up and just stream him this week, just because, is Russell Wilson. Because what is probably going to happen is that this game, though it is a 42.5 point over-under, it screams, Vegas is screaming, we don't know what's going to happen. It could shoot out. This game could absolutely shoot out. And also, the Falcons could get up to a 2-touchdown lead in the first half because they're just a better team. So I see the better team getting out to like a double-digit lead in the second half, and then Russell Wilson having to play hero ball and with George Pickens, and that is a recipe for streaming success. So like if you did draft a quarterback who was facing a matchup that you don't love, like for example, Burrow this week is a terrible play, right? Because the quarterback on the other side of the matchup cannot carry a shootout.
Yeah.
So Burrow has a limited ceiling this week because that game just can't shoot out. It's got a 40-point total. It's a home game. It's a Zach Moss game. It's not a Burrow game. So if someone came to me and they said, is this crazy for me to start Russell Wilson over Joe Burrow? I would say that's not crazy. I wouldn't do it, but it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. Right?
Yeah,
it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. And Justin Herbert. You might be concerned about his foot. You might be concerned about his receivers. You might be concerned about the fact that it's a 40-point total. Well, then I would say, you could just play Russell Wilson this week. Russell Wilson is a safer bet than Justin Herbert this week.
Yeah, Russ can play. He can play hero ball. He can definitely do some things in garbage time. We've seen that even in the last couple of years where he's obviously not where he once was. He can put some stuff together. I could see that being a kind of an outside option for people that are, again, like that's a good example of the Justin Herbert.
Yeah, there's some. These are the micro moves you make week to week, where 99% of fantasy gamers are not going to be benching their starting quarterback, the guy they drafted first. Yeah. But you might actually say, based on the projections say that actually it's Wilson this week. So, Travis Kelce, what do you think the probability is that he's dust?
I mean, he's defied the odds. He's defied the odds for several years now. I am leaning towards him this being the last run. I mean, he might play another couple more seasons, but when it comes to just doing what he's always done out there, I think that it's more likely that the wheels are going to come off. We saw it last year, in certain stints where he just did not have that production, but then he turned it on, in the playoffs. So I think, for me, like in my home league, we talk about it. I was kind of I forced myself into a situation where I needed to keep him. So I'm hoping that he can play strong all season long. But at this stage, I mean, I think that the time is now, where we got to pivot from him being, number one tight end out there. Wheels are likely going to fall off, and it'll be sad. There'll be a blank space when he's missing in the league, because he's definitely been special to have on fantasy rosters.
It's not happening this year, man.
No,
I mean, they Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, they brought in a lot of options. That's the thing. It's like it's not just about him. It's the fact that there's just better options out there now than it used to be. Just him. Remember when it was Sky Moore and Marquez Valdez-Scantling? There was no one available. Now, if you're Patrick Mahomes, again, simulate it in your mind. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to wait that extra second. You're going to scramble that extra step to your outside. You're going to make that extra step, maybe even fade back a little bit more, just waiting for Worthy to get that separation you've been in. That's another target that's not going to Kelce.
Yeah, it's true, and I think that you can see how they utilized Rashee Rice last year. A lot of times when Kelce was not having any production in that, those runs where he was not doing really well at all, they were using Rice as kind of that safety blanket. Rice has a similar kind of ability to Kelce when it comes to just kind of getting open in the middle of the field. So Rice kind of taking some targets from Kelce, being that safety blanket with the added weapons. I think this is the time to pivot from Travis Kelce.
Yeah, this is, again, a bit of analysis you don't hear as much. When you have Brown and Worthy extending the field on the outside and the perimeter, the whole thing is so that you can run those Rashee Rice drag routes across the middle.
Yep.
But that's overlapping with where Travis Kelce is. So Travis Kelce's not the number one option over the middle anymore. And so that's tactically their best receiver, who's now a year older and seasoned, is teed up to be their possession receiver. And then the question is, you're gonna see all these games this year where it's Kelce 4 for 40, no touchdowns.
Yeah.
You're gonna see a bunch of those games, and it used to be you always write it down, 6 to 8 catches, right? No, man, no. And that's before we talk about the fact that he's lost some explosiveness.
Exactly.
Naturally.
I think,
he's the same age as Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's wild. It's been, like I said, it's been an incredible career. He's so talented. He's it's one of the best to ever do it. But you're right. I mean, you're talking added. If he's healthy, there's going to be a downgrade in his usage out there. But you add in the fact that of his age and his losing a step. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not. It's time. It's time to fade Travis Kelce.
And looking at tight end streamers, again, Jonnu Smith against the Jaguars. I think that's a great streamer this week. Again, he's the number 3 option in that passing game. Why not?
Yeah.
And the beauty of Jonnu Smith is he's a great yak receiver. So even if he doesn't get a lot of targets, he can break a 40-yard run for a touchdown. Just on a stream
I think
play.
that's a good streamer for sure. That's who I think of when I think of a deeper tight end play. It is Jonnu Smith because of that situation in Miami. I mean, that offense is going to produce. He's going to be out there. Tension's going to be on other players. I think Jonnu's a good one.
All right, man. I'll get you out of here. Give us a bold prediction. Bold prediction for 2024. Hit us, Kevin Murray.
Well, I mean, I am not. I'm not a huge Kyren Williams fan. I think, I think he had a great season. Obviously, those injuries were concerning last year. I think Blake Corum is gonna be the main guy down the stretch for that team. I think obviously the concerns with some of the punt usage, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we don't know what that's going to be. We don't know how it's going to shake out. But I think that in the long run, you think about a guy whose dynasty value is at a certain peak point. Things can really turn quick if we see some big usage of Corum this weekend. And things can turn really quick for Kyren Williams. Would have shocked me if he has a solid season. It wouldn't shock me. But if I had a bold prediction, it would be Blake Corum being the man down the stretch in LA.
Kyren Williams will be the biggest fantasy football bust of the last 10 years.
Ooh, that's good.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.